We're back on the Exit 52 podcast presented by Jimmy's Famous Seafood. It is Thursday night, Friday morning as you're listening to this, October 27th. My name is Jake Louque, and I'm joined by Spencer Nathaniel Schultz. How is it going, sir?
Going well. Right when we were recording Jumbo Set on Tuesday night, I felt the sickness coming down, got my fall sickness underway. So pushing through, this is my Jordan flu game, and I'm feeling okay. Got a little medication going on. Thursday night football, we're in the swing of things. We got our nice little third summer going on in the Baltimore area. It's 80 degrees, going to be really nice this weekend. So really a lovely time for me to be sick, but I'm really excited. I don't know why. I'm just really excited for Thursday night football tonight. I don't know why this game doesn't particularly speak to me. I just really am in the mood to sit down and watch some football tonight. So I'm fired up about that. How are you feeling?
Good. Yeah. I feel like talking to the Settle Man gets me a little more H for Thursday night football than I used to be. I think, we kind of preview those games a little bit. We talk some betting with them. Bills are, they're trying to keep the ship afloat. Buccaneers, they're sort of teetering themselves a little bit. I think people maybe look at them as a little more smoke and mirrors, but the Mayfield story has been interesting to follow. So yeah, that's a good matchup. And feeling okay myself. I've been dodging the sickness on my own, though I'm pretty sure I had COVID like 2 months ago. So maybe my natural immunity is all built up, but who could say really? The third summer. I mean, I'm going to be playing golf for the first time in like 3 months this Saturday down the ocean. So really looking forward to that. Thankful for third summer coming at an opportune time for me.
It most certainly is. I'm very jealous. Have a spooky party if I'm better tomorrow, and then a wedding on Saturday, which will be my fourth in 4 weeks, every weekend of October this far. So
your life is just, your life be like, ooh, I just can't, I couldn't do it myself personally. You're a true hero.
No, I secretly spend a lot of time by myself and in complete silence. So I like to recharge the old social battery. I'm not a big like outside of the weekend social guy at all, really. And plus we do this anyway, so I talk enough. I talk all day, I talk all night, talk. I like to shut it down in the off hours. But with that, the Baltimore Ravens, as we're at the official unofficial midpoint of the season, will travel to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. And that game will be taking place at 4:25, which I didn't think about until I just typed that in. You might have even heard it on my keyboard on Sunday, October 29th. The Ravens are sitting at 8.5-point favorites, which has been teetering around 8.5, 9. Seen some 9.5 at certain points in time as well. So the Ravens will do the damn thing, go down to Arizona and take on them Cardinals. And it's feels like this game is going to be swept so far under the rug of the NFL schedule. I'm not sure how many 4 o'clock games there are, sometimes because there are only like 3-4 o'clock games during the bye weeks where teams can have byes. It's not the case, but man, this is not drawing a lot of national intrigue at all.
Yeah, no, it's not. I think if Kyler Murray had maybe come back to practice a week earlier, it would have, but I don't really see any path to him playing in this game against, a top 2 defense in the league. Really, like, not even being talked about the fact that he's in a new offense, I'm pretty sure, right? Didn't Gannon bring in his own staff. So, yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a transition for Kyler back into that lineup, but they've got a competitive team. They've got a frisky team, but yeah, I think most of the footballing world expects the Ravens to go in there and take care of business against that 8.5 or 8 points, whatever it is. And I guess we'll get into it, but yeah, it does kind of set up to be one of those types of games. But alternatively, you could look at this as classic Baltimore Ravens. They get a big win at home. They trounce a team. Everyone's feeling really good about them. And then all of a sudden they step on a rake and, things are all of a sudden teetering back the other way. Usually teetering, getting a lot of burn tonight. But yeah, I mean, that's, I guess right off the bat, why will this not be one of those games, or why will it?
I think that it will not be one of those games, because when you go look at the Arizona Cardinals defense, and I do think this team as a whole they're in the right places. Execution wise, they are aligned in ways that make sense. I think the calls they have, they're keeping it pretty simple. They are just pretty barren of talent on the defensive side of the football. And when you go look at the Cardinals defense in win probability situations between 10 and 90%, their rushing success rate allowed is the 4th worst mark in the league, the 29th mark in the league. They are not a stout run defense, and I think lack big boys inside that play big or anything like that, to be able to kind of go make this Ravens team deviate from what they do like to do at their core, which is run the ball down your throat. I feel like this is going to be a big Gus Edwards game, maybe a big Justice Hill game. We'll see what happens with Keaton Mitchell or whatever running back is elevated. But I just think the Ravens are going to control the line of scrimmage. We watched them play the Detroit Lions team that has an Aleem McNeil and does have a Hutchinson, although I think he does get maybe a little bit too much burn because of how high he was drafted. He's a productive pass rusher. I don't think he's a scary player defending the run. But ultimately, to me, this Cardinals front, Zaven Collins coming down, who was putting together a nice season in his first year in that true outside linebacker sense. Just not really a lot of meat in the middle to scare you away. And this Ravens offensive line, Linderbaum, Moses, and Zeitler in particular, we do have an interview, a recording dropping with Louque from the Baltimore Banner, and talking about how Ronnie Stanley took a defender through the back of the end zone and into Louque's knee, who was photographing the game. But with that, you go look at the middle of their interior offensive line. Kevin Strong is questionable in this one, has been missing some practice. Leakai Fotu, Jonathan Ledbetter, just not warthogs down there in the trenches. There's no Michael Pierce there. There's no Aleem McNeil. There's no DJ Reader. And I think because of that, the Ravens are just going to be able to get on their front, get to the second level, and hurt them bad. So I think the Ravens will be able to run the ball fluidly. And if they can do that, I think they just light teams up.
Yeah, and just looking at this defense versus their offense, you mentioned the guys up the spine there that maybe don't have a ton of size. I'm looking in the secondary a little bit. They got Budda Baker there, who's a really nice player. But then you got Jalen Thompson at the other safety spot, questionable with injury, and then Starling Thomas the fifth, and Marco Wilson starting at left and right corner. And then Dennis Gardeck, I don't know, he's in the linebacking core, it looks like, but that is a name that I'm familiar with. Not super familiar with those other guys there in the secondary. So, yeah, man, it kind of just feels like our boy Gannon with the pew, pew, pew is getting these guys to play above their station a little bit, because they've had some frisky games. Like we said, they beat the Cowboys and everything, but, not a lot of name brand talent to speak of here.
No, there most certainly isn't. And I do really like Marco Wilson. I think he's a nice player and someone that I think could be successful in the right situation. The Cardinals are a very heavy quarters team. They run quarters about 25% of the time, one of the highest rates in the league. And the Ravens have had a pretty low success rate against quarters. So that would be that and cover six are the two that have kind of given them the most trouble. So I think people might go into this one expecting the Ravens to be able to throw the ball a ton, work out some of those things. We have Kurt Warner, who did his film breakdown we spoke about in the Jumbo set, getting into kind of some of the timing and clunkiness of the Ravens offense. And again, I do think the Cardinals defense is in the right places. I think that they are doing an okay job in coverage relative to how bad their efficiency looks, relative to how bad the numbers look. In terms of disguising their coverage, they do disguise. They don't. Pardon me. They will go close to open a little bit, so they will give you a middle of the field close look, that single high look, and then drop out. They do leave the middle of the field open on 63% of their coverages, which is the highest rate in the NFL. So that's Mark Andrews City. That's Nelson Aguilar City. I think we'll see Beckham and Bateman keep working those.
Bateman's been getting a lot of those, a little bit, kind of those, in routes from the intermediate. And so, yeah.
Crossing and shallow and all those kinds of things, definitely. So, I think the Cardinals aren't great where the Ravens are successful in coverage, which is Lamar firing that intermediate area. He's always been so good at that 10 to 19 yard area. I do think they do an okay job keeping stuff in front of them. They lose at the catch point a lot. Like tight contested catches, it seems they are not able to outmuscle. They don't have a particularly, I don't know if athletic is the right word, but just like aggressive secondary. And Budda Baker can come downhill with his hair on fire, but he is still ultimately a smaller guy. So, he's a nice player, but it kind of reminds me of Kevin Byard, who just got traded. It's like when you don't have much talent around you, it will bring your talent down. You'll be trying to cover for mistakes. You're put in difficult situations. That's what Budda Baker kind of reminds me of this year on this Cardinals team too. So I think we could see a nice day from an Aguilar and an Andrews. I don't know that this is going to be some explosive pass performance by the Ravens. I don't know that it needs to be, but I don't know. The Cardinals, it just feels like they're in a weird spot and they're not super talented. And the Ravens offensive line's cooking with gas and the run game's starting to be able to kind of really hurt teams too. So I think some RPO stuff, some zone stuff, some of the option game, some of the counter game that we've seen. Those will be I think when we look back, those will be the plays that the Ravens win on.
Yeah, it's interesting. They've got 20 total sacks across their team. I think Dennis Gardeck is their sack master, actually, with 4 there. So interested to see.
Gardeck is a really fun player. He's super fun. When I worked at SIS, Cardinals were one of my teams I covered, and he had like one of the most efficient rotational pass rushing seasons ever in 2020. He just is like a classic long blonde-haired white dude that rushes the passer as hard as he can every play. Still plays a ton of special teams. Really a great rags to riches undrafted guy that comes up and ends up getting a pretty notable contract after working his tail off on special teams. So he's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a guy like that for sure. And yeah, I mean, and like that kind of speaks to me like what we're talking about with this roster when one of those guys is, and no disrespect against him, and he's obviously very productive, but like when one of those guys is leading your team in a certain like pretty crucial stat, that's kind of tough. You've got Victor Dimukeji, is that how you say it? The other linebacker, and then Zaven
Out
Collins.
of Duke. He's a local guy. Can't remember. I think he went to Gilman, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
One of those schools.
MIAA guy. Okay, there we go. Now we're talking. Yeah, Zaven Collins and him tied for 3.5 sacks. So they're kind of the other two guys. And Zaven Collins, he is, I would say, a name brand guy. He was highly drafted and well thought of, I think. And they've had so much shit going on with their like just players on defense there, like Isaiah Simmons. They could never figure him out. Just like kind of a weird run with some of these defensive players, and that definitely is going to happen. When you fire a defensive coach and then you bring in a Cliff Kingsbury, and it's like, what the hell is the defensive approach here with this guy? And now, they've brought in Gannon, and it seems like maybe he's a little bit more buttoned up on that side of the ball, but I don't know, man. It's just kind of a faceless, rudderless operation right now.
It is. And the one thing that's most interesting in this whole conversation is the Cardinals sim pressure more than the Ravens do, and that's Gannon's whole MO. They're in that same category. It's really the Cardinals, the Dolphins, the Rams, and the Ravens are all above 30% in terms of simulating pressure. I don't think there's another team above 25%. So NFL league average on sim is actually 14.7, and the Cardinals are doing it almost 3 times as often as league average. So that is they're spamming sim pressures. That means they're trying to overload, do those kinds of things. But when you don't have a player that is forcing protection to do something like you mentioned, a TJ Watt, a Garrett, a preeminent pass rusher. Interesting in this context, we heard Terrell Austin, the Steelers defensive coordinator, talk about, we're going to start moving TJ Watt around. When you just line somebody up and sit him in the same spot, that allows protection to pretty easily move to that player to make sure they're not wrecking the game. The Cardinals are the exact opposite. They don't have anyone to do that. So the offensive line and protection is just going to be hyper aware of picking up pressure. So it's good bones. Like there's good bones on this house when I watch their defense. They're just in a new system. They don't have a ton of talent. They don't have a ton of veterans defensively either, especially in that first and second level, let alone successful veterans. So if the Cardinals are going to have success, it's because the Ravens haven't seen one of those high sim rate teams, but they are one of those high sim rate teams at the same time. So that goes into the practice kind of conversation when you're playing against a team like in Wink Martindale. It was a lot of blitzing, a lot of man coverage. So the Ravens probably felt more comfortable against teams that do that because you practice against every day. So if the Ravens do have one of those games where it's like, why are they playing down to the Cardinals? It's because Rich Gannon's got some fun things in up his sleeve for a Lamar Jackson protection style, I should say.
Jonathan Gannon.
John Gannon. What did I say, Rich?
Rich Gannon. Yeah. Shout out to Rich. We love Rich.
I love Rich Gannon. I think about him like way more than I think anyone else does. I don't know why.
He's a good like guys naming dudes like sitting around Rich Gannon. He
is. Plus one of the first football games I was like conscious for, like alive as a human, like paying attention, was that Ravens AFC Championship against him.
Well, yeah, there was that. And then there was and then the next year you were just in absolute tears over Kurt Warner losing in the Super Bowl to the Patriots and the greatest show on turf. So that was tough moment for young Spenny. But I guess like
I was.
That's a good segue because I was going to ask you, like, Kurt Warner's video comes out. I think you and I and Cole, we were talking about it a little bit. We all agree that like it's totally fine because, his criticisms are valid, and it's not like the ESPN, you won't believe what this person said and this person sounded off and like that kind of shit. Like he actually like watched the tape and he's like putting a video out and everything. So when he has his comments that we think are valid, and when you have Todd Monken in front of the mic doing his Marty Funkhauser routine and, talking about how he's, not satisfied either, what do they do to get to a place where things are more optimal, where Jackson is not having to improvise as much against this Cardinals team? What can they do to get into an even higher gear than they were last week, which was pretty good, but, left some room for improvement by their own admission?
I think that it just comes down to we already had this kind of full conversation. I've already put these thoughts out prior to this whole Kurt Warner thing. Mike McDonald's defense, Patrick Queen said, I like his defense because I am told and know what the other 10 guys are doing, as opposed to Wink Martindale's, which was, this is what you do, put the blinders on like a horse and do your job. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. The offense feels like the Wink defense, to oversimplify things. Feels like guys kind of have blinders on some of these route combinations, passing concepts, those buzzwords we love, route combinations. Talking about that. It's like the green dot and route combinations. It's all Ravens fans ever talk about. But you have to be aware, and I do think Mark Andrews is a major culprit of this over time. It's that same style of Travis Kelce to me, it's like Andrews wants to go beat his man, whatever that means. But sometimes beating your man a certain way will end up with you being too flat and close to another receiver. If it's supposed to be like a flood where there's a flat and that kind of out or flood route, and then that deep post or that 9 route or that fade, if you're too flat into the flat guy, then it's going to allow the flat man's defender to play 2 guys at once. So it's having that awareness that I maybe can't win a certain way, or I'm going to intrude on the space of the route concept. I'm going to deviate into someone else's space, and that's going to make both of us, number one, not a target. Then it's going to, in turn, make the quarterback have to hold the football, move his eyes, go through his progression, scramble, all of those kinds of things. And it's not just Mark Andrews. Zay Flowers does it. Go watch Kurt Warner's video. And it's not that there's like a carelessness. I just think it's a lack of understanding. And what can you do about it? You can talk about it in the film room on Monday. You can talk about it with Lamar Jackson on Tuesday as they're doing a walkthrough or whatever. Wednesday, not a walkthrough, but they do their joint conversations Tuesdays. Then on Wednesday, you can go on the practice field and be conscious of it. That's all you can do, is make it a point of emphasis, continue to learn and understand. And it's easier said than done, because in the NFL, offense is based on if-then. The thing you're going to do in concept X, or let's call it a flood concept, is going to be different versus a middle of the field closed coverage versus a middle of the field open coverage, and also versus inside leverage or outside leverage the defender gives you. So there's 4 possible if-thens on a lot of things, and that's a lot of information to try to process in a very short amount of time when there are gigantic humans running around like Ronnie Stanley, who ran into our friend Louque. It's a lot. That's why football's hard. That's why they practice so much. That's why it's a quote-unquote practice sport. So it's also not that bad either. Like, I think Warner's point was, this is not some offensive paradise going on right now. This is not some pass game utopia. He saw things that were sloppy. And we talked about why the Lions don't do anything to make Lamar Jackson move. They don't confuse him at all. So he was able to just sit back and go to his second and his third read and pick them apart or scramble. But when a team like, let's say, let me go find a team that I think would be a bad matchup based on disguising coverage. Let's see. I'm going to try and find, where the hell is it? Disguise rates. So a team like the Chargers, a team like the Dolphins or the Eagles or the Panthers, who like to go middle of the field coverage disguised, meaning open or close to open, or another team that likes to go open to close, which would be also the Dolphins, also the Eagles. The Packers do that a lot. The Rams do that a lot. A couple teams that the Ravens will see on there. That will give more trouble because it's more processing to happen when you're also trying to get through. So the Lions kind of lining up and playing and not stunting at the same time, not blitzing a lot at the same time, not simulating pressure, allowed Jackson to get to his second and third reads a lot. Again, I think it's gone into hyperbole because of how much we've talked about it and how much of a talking point. But like we said, it wasn't just some random talking head. It was someone that watched the tape, had specific plays, and then went and did a 10-minute breakdown. You can go watch Kurt Warner's breakdown. It's on his Twitter and on YouTube. So I think it's all valid things. And that's why Todd Monken agreed. So what else is there to say about it? He was like, yeah, we did some things good. We did some things bad. The spacing has to be better, and it's a focus of ours. So what do? You talk about it. You discuss how it can be better, and then you go try to apply it on the field.
Good enough. All right. We're moving over to the other side of the ball. Arizona Cardinals depth chart. Quarterback Joshua Dobbs, running back Amari DeMercado, wide receiver Marquise Brown, we know that name, wide receiver Michael Wilson, wide receiver Rondale Moore, tight end Trey McBride, left tackle DJ Humphries, left guard Elijah Wilkinson, questionable, center Hjalte Froholt, right guard Will Hernandez, right tackle Paris Johnson Jr. Your immediate reaction to that depth chart?
They just don't have a lot of explosiveness. They don't have a lot of physicality. Marquise Brown is a twitchy player. We don't have to tell Ravens fans about Marquise Brown.
Well, we might have to, actually.
That's true. DeMercado has a little bit of juice. Rondale Moore is a little bit of a mighty mouse, and he can do some things they just no one ever uses him down the football field, which is perplexing.
A lot of nebbish guys on this offense. Feels like there's not a ton of bulk, A lot of
and that's why James Conner was fun.
Yeah.
Who has been injured and is on IR still, I believe. When you go look at their offensive line, Paris Johnson, the rookie, DJ Humphries has been a Eugene Monroe type guy, like a Morgan Moses type guy throughout his career. He's been up and down and okay, and not maybe a preeminent player. Then the middle of their offensive line is just not super athletic or technically savvy, so they don't have a great line there. A lot of their offense is just Josh Dobbs running around. That's
what it looks like on Red Zone. Like, I have not watched a ton of this team, to be quite honest. And I feel like when we do see them on Red Zone and when you do get the idea of them being frisky, there's nothing like that makes a team friskier than like a backup quarterback that runs around a lot. And like, you see them on Red Zone and they're down like 10 in like the third, halfway through the third quarter, and the guy like rips off a long run, and it's like, oh, that team's frisky. And like, they kind of define frisky to me right now.
Yeah, teams have played a lot of man coverage against them. They are frisky. Dobbs, they run a lot of option stuff, a lot of spread stuff, and Dobbs likes to, run around. He's a physical guy. He's faster than most. And with their run game not being as physical, like we mentioned with James Conner out, their offensive line not being that great, it just feels like they're forced into being this kind of spread timing team, but it's not their first string quarterback. Drew Petzing is the Cardinals offensive coordinator. He spent the last 3 years with Stefanski in Cleveland. So you do see some of those elements, some of the gun run stuff, some of the little bit of the boot and under center stuff as well. But again, it kind of reminds me of their secondary, where it's like, I like their spacing a lot. I think they have pretty clean spacing, actually. They just don't have ball winners, and they don't have demons after the catch. And it's not, to your point, this big physical team. Like, there's no Deebo Samuel or Jamar Chase or some, dog after the catch or anything like that. So they're like a nice team to make you really sweat covering. Like, they'll play a competitive game. They'll lose out in the fourth quarter. It'll be tight around halftime, a lot of these games they play, and then they just don't have the horses when the game comes to the high leverage moments to turn it on and compete and make winning plays.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood Brown, 383 yards, is leading them receiving yards and touchdowns with 3. So, I mean, that's solid for him. 343 for Wilson right behind him, and those two guys are kind of leading the pack by a decent margin. So it looks like he's having a solid season. You see some of these highlights, like I said, on Red Zone, of him beating a guy one-on-one on a flag route or whatever it might be for a touchdown. And, that's kind of what they're relying on here. But I don't know. I look at a Ravens defense with some corners that have played, above their station. And then you've got Marlon Humphrey in front of all of them. And you've got Rocky Sin in the mix here and there for matchups. And, you've got a middle of the defense with these linebackers, and you've got Roquan Smith with an injured shoulder. And then all of a sudden he's wearing a cowboy hat and he's perfectly healthy. And he's giving these, bully pulpit type quotes about how he's going to play no matter what. And I don't know, man. This looks like a mismatch in favor of Baltimore. I'm usually not entirely bullish on them, but this one is just, this matchup, in particular their offense versus this defense, I feel pretty confident that the Ravens are stronger at pretty much every level.
Yeah, I think that they'll be able to generate a lot of pressure. I could see Odafe Owe having a big day against this front with his explosiveness and the length that he showed and some of the ability to disengage a little faster. I think we could see him with another sack in this one. I could see Jadeveon Clowney conversely being able to out-physical their tackles. So I just don't trust that Cardinals interior offensive line to hold up. Josh Dobbs is really hard to take down, though. He's got a little bit of that Big Ben strong man to him, and he can move. So maybe it is a little less sacks, a little more pressure, and Dobbs trying to make plays on the run, and anything can happen in those situations. So just have to stay disciplined and not vacate your zones and things like that. But it is the NFL at the end of the day. Like the teams that are 9-point underdogs cover 61% of the time over the last 5 years. This isn't college football. It's not Alabama versus San Jose State. Like they can come out and do anything. So I don't know. It's easy to say anybody can do anything. I'm not really expecting that to happen. Like I said, I think the Ravens are able to run the ball. I would like to correct myself from earlier. The Ravens have not struggled against quarters. What I was looking at was percentage of coverage faced offensively. The Ravens have seen very little cover 6 end quarters, which the Cardinals do play a lot. So there you go. I mean, maybe a little unfamiliarity, but I don't know. I think that kind of when you play a lot of quarters and a lot of cover 6, that means there's a lot of light boxes. If there's a lot of light boxes, it's easy to run the football, especially when there's no nose tackle or elite linebacker duo in there to make you respect them. So again, I just think the Ravens are kind of run the ball and run this Cardinals team out of the gym.
Yeah. And I don't think there doesn't seem to be much to belabor here. Like this just seems like a game where the Ravens just got to go out and take care of business. They've got to get away from this, like we've talked about, this trap game bullshit, play down to the competition.
I don't care about that though. I just care about who cares if they don't cover 8.5? Like
it's not even about covering. Just go fucking win. That's all I'm saying. Like you got to get away from this, losing these types of games. That's what I meant to say. I don't care about the covering and the spread or anything like that.
I feel like they don't really lose these kind of games though. I feel like they just don't ever beat the good teams. I feel like that's really been the issue. I feel like they bully crappy teams for the most part for years.
I feel like they lose at least one game like this a year.
That's fine. But that happens. Like the Chiefs lose one game.
It does happen, but you've given yourself a little bit less rope by losing those 2 games that you did lose. So you got to win.
It would be really dumb to lose this game. It would take a 12 penalty, 3 turnover day to lose this game.
And all I'm saying is you can't afford that. Like, let's just go out. You're the better team by a wide margin, in my opinion, and just go out there and play like it.
Especially with Murray coming back to practice. It's like, I don't know. I feel like the focus isn't really around what happens this weekend from this organization as the Cardinals. I don't know that you're going to get a dedicated, looking to make a statement Cardinals team in this game.
Yeah, no, it's not. You're bang on with that. I think that's definitely a situation where if he were coming back this week, there would be a lot more hype leading up to it. I think the players would have a little bit more pep in their step and, hashtag momentum, whatever you want to call it. I do think there would be a psychological boost. This week, though, it kind of feels like maybe they're coming to the end of a certain rope and they're, ready to start off on a new one when Murray does come back into the lineup. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, like I said, not a whole lot to belabor here. It's just Ravens, go take care of your business. Go win this game and get it done. Prediction time. What do you got?
I do feel that this is going to be a game where they win like 21 to like 12 or like 13 or something. And the Cardinals like score a late touchdown to make it look on the box score. And then everyone's like, oh, the Ravens could barely beat the Cardinals. And in reality, they control them from the beginning of the game. And like I said, I think the Cardinals score late to make this like almost cover, something like that. I just feel like the Ravens can cruise through this one. I would love to see the thing. If the Ravens do blow them out, it's because a Rashad Bateman or a Zay Flowers, there's more of those explosive plays we saw last week after the catch, and somebody can take off, have a couple long touchdowns, something like that. So I think the Ravens somewhere in the low 20s, maybe mid 20s, and the Cardinals somewhere around like 8 to 11. So like I said, I'll go 21-12 final score.
Yeah, I went with 28 to 16. I think the Ravens keep it rolling a little bit offensively. I've got them scoring 4 touchdowns, and then Cardinals touchdown and 3 field goals. So, it just basically what I'm imploring them to do. I expect that they're going to go do it. I think they've got the guys. Things have settled down a little bit after those bad losses. I think they got a 2 nice psyche repairing wins here in a row, and I think they go get another one. I mean, you're going to the West Coast, basically. You're switching time zones here, going to Mountain Time, but it seems like the vibes are good. You got Patrick Queen handing out cowboy hats, like I said. It seems like the vibes are pretty good. So I think they keep it rolling here, 28-16.
I feel like it's easier to go west time zone wise with all that stuff. But then again,
it's only the 1 hour. Or is it 2 hours? Because Arizona has their own time.
Arizona has a split of 2 and 3 hours in it.
Okay.
You can drive back and forth in the state of Arizona and switch time zones. It's like a goofy tourist thing to do.
Yeah.
I think I just saw a TikTok from someone that I know, like throwing a football over the time zone and being like, "This is a 1 hour pass." I was like, "Ho, ho, 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 ho." But I think it's easier to go east to west. I think it's easier to go back in time than it is to move games up.
Go back in time. Shout out to Huey Lewis in the news.
Don't get me started on Huey Lewis in the news and their funk. But yeah, I think that about does it for this one. Go win a game. That's all. 6-2. Trade deadline coming up.
Doesn't seem like it should be that hard, does it? Just go do it. Just go do it. It's spooky season. Halloween is here. Where the vibes are good. Win this game. Go home. Eat your candy.
The Ravens are going to force feed Odell Beckham a touchdown in this game. That's my prediction as well.
I hope so. I hope they do it on a batch.
Lamar has been forcing the ball to Odell Beckham in like goal. We saw it last week. The one that gets called back. He's been tackled on the 1 twice this year too. Throws the goal line fade to him against the Steelers. This is the game where they force Odell Beckham into the end zone. I'm taking Odell Beckham anytime touchdown.
They should do an end around with him.
Something they're gonna do something like that. There will be some little thing to get him the ball to see if he can go score.
They did I remember when he was on the Browns, he had that end around against the Cowboys to beat them. That was one of the more badass plays I've seen.
That was sick. I would guess it's gonna be like a boot. And Odell sits down in the middle of the field away from the play, and Lamar kind of throws it back to him. That's going to be me calling my exact.
He had a couple of those with Stafford, I think. So yeah, I could see that happening too.
They've had one this year too, so I think it's going to be like Lamar rolling left. Odell is sitting down and doesn't move, like right at the goal line, and Lamar just kind of zips him a ball back. So that is coming from in my plums. I know that's going to happen.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, I think you're right. This is kind of, if you're going to get a guy going or more going than he has been. Look, he's looked good the last.
I don't even know if it's going. I think it's like a respect thing and like a want to and like a culmination of him being on the Ravens. It's like that kind of thing. It's like,
yeah, to your point, they've been trying to. I mean, it's
right.
They really.
I don't think he feels like he's been neglected at all. He's only been playing 45-50% of snaps, and he gets for playing half of snaps or less, he gets a solid amount of targets.
He's been hurt a couple games too. Yeah, I mean, it's just
right.
he's still gearing up. Like he's like we've said, he's kind of a closer this year, if anything. So
that's what they need him to be. They need him to come on strong late.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens with this game. In the meantime, everyone enjoy your Halloween weekends. Thank you very much for listening. As always, thank you to our presenting sponsors, Jimmy's Famous Seafood, Fed Thrill, Black-Eyed Susan Spices, to everyone else who is on the ship as well. Thank you for joining me, my friend. We'll talk again on Sunday night. You guys, in the meantime, can follow us on social media at Exit52 Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that like button, comment, get all that stuff going. Still trying to grow the brand over there. So
the biggest, easiest way you can support us if you like our content is to subscribe on YouTube.
Absolutely. So go ahead and do that, and we will talk to you guys again very soon.
See ya.
Arrivederci.